When George Smith, a newlywed husband, went missing on a cruise ship in July of 2005, did you ever hear about the odd circumstances surrounding his disappearance? The fact that his case has not been solved to this day has left his family and friends in a state of heartbreak. During this video, we are going to walk you through the tragic account of his disappearance and share with you all of the evidence that has been accumulated over the course of the years. There have been a lot of investigations, but the fate of George is still unclear, and there are a lot of questions that have not been answered. Join us as we delve into this remarkable story and investigate the intriguing clues that may assist us in solving this mystery that has been around for a very long time. But before we get into that, if you enjoy stories like this one, please make sure to give our video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. On a consistent basis, we make it a priority to guarantee that you receive the most fascinating and captivating true crime content possible. Jennifer Hagel, who was George Allen Smith III's soulmate, was the woman he was happily married to at the time. He was 26 years old. In June of 2005, the couple had just recently tied the knot, and immediately afterward, they made the decision to go on a lavish cruise through the Mediterranean for their honeymoon. Sadly, they had no idea that within a short period of time, their vacation would develop into a worse nightmare than they had anticipated. Their honeymoon trip quickly developed into a living nightmare both for them and for their families. But what happened exactly? The happiness they had experienced was suddenly replaced by a sense of hopelessness when George unexpectedly disappeared from the Royal Caribbean ship that was sailing off the coast of Turkey without a trace. At first, both Jennifer and their families thought they might be able to find him, but there was a slow decline in the expectation that George would be found alive as the days became weeks and the weeks turned into months. It is not hard to believe that the disappearance of George caused shockwaves to travel through his family and acquaintances in Connecticut. What they were unable to fathom was the fact that a newlywed man could simply disappear from a cruise ship. As a result of the odd circumstances surrounding his disappearance, several doubts were raised, including whether or not he had drowned. Did he die by a murder? Is there something more that took place? In spite of the many investigations that have been conducted, George's fate is still unknown, and the fact that the FBI eventually decided to shut the investigation into George's disappearance speaks of how tragic a turn of events this was. His family, on the other hand, stays steadfast in their belief that George was murdered. The occurrence has left an indelible mark on their lives, turning what was supposed to be a dream honeymoon into a nightmare that will be with them forever. In any case, now that you get the big picture, let us take a step back and investigate the specifics of George's absence a little bit more. The newlyweds were last seen alive on July 5, 2005, as they were traveling on the Royal Caribbean cruise liner Brilliance of the Seas for their honeymoon. Before things took a turn for the worst, they had been celebrating their honeymoon for a number of days at that point. When Jennifer returned to their cabin, after spending the night out with her friends, she discovered that her husband had gone missing till that fateful night. She quickly informed the crew of the ship that he had vanished, and they immediately began searching for him. However, despite the crew conducting exhaustive searches throughout the entire ship, George was nowhere to be located. The couple was taking a very common trip that began in Greece and continued via Turkey before returning to Italy. However, despite the fact that Turkish officials were informed, they were unable to locate any trace of him throughout their search of the coastline of the nation. Many questions remain unanswered regarding George's disappearance. The last time anyone saw him, he was partying late into the night with his wife and a few other passengers on the passenger ship. After waking up the following morning, Jennifer found herself in her cabin by herself, and George was nowhere to be found. Bloodstains, on the other hand, were discovered on the balcony of their stateroom, as well as on the lifeboats below, which suggests that they may have fallen or been pushed. No definitive judgments have been reached, despite the fact that the evidence suggests that there was some sort of foul play. Some people believe that George may have fallen overboard while under the influence of alcohol if he was inebriated. But what then were the bloodstains doing on the rails? As a result of that inconsistency, some people believe that he was murdered and then thrown from the ship. Sadly, it is quite unlikely that the truth will ever be discovered. A short time after the incident, one of the witnesses came forward with a terrifying description of seeing someone being tossed overboard on the same night that George vanished, which added another layer of mystery to the situation. This witness, who prefers to remain anonymous, stated that they saw a tall man dressed in black standing at the edge of the deck of the ship. An object was then thrown overboard by the figure, and then it vanished into the darkness. The rumors and suspicions that have been going around about George's disappearance have only been fueled by this narrative. A number of people are of the opinion that this could have been a hired assassin, while others are of the opinion that it could have been a member of the crew who harbored bad feelings towards George. The case has not been solved despite the fact that several investigations have been conducted and no arrests have been made. Of course, there were those who assumed that Jennifer, the wife who had only recently gotten married and was now wealthy thanks to her husband's inheritance, was the primary suspect. After all, in the case that her spouse passed away, she would be eligible to receive a substantial amount of money. However, there is no evidence that has been discovered that connects her to the disappearance of George, so the facts are still not clear. Greenwich, Connecticut resident George Smith IV was 26 years old at the time of his death. During the time when he vanished without a trace, he and his wife Jennifer were on their honeymoon aboard the Royal Caribbean cruise ship Brilliance of the Seas. George had been working as a manager at the construction company that his family owned prior to his disappearance. His friends and relatives described him as outgoing and kind. In addition, he was a student at the University of Connecticut, where he was receiving his education in mechanical engineering. He was not a well-known individual in the public eye, yet the circumstances surrounding his disappearance caused it to gain a great deal of interest around the world. As anyone could have expected, the disappearance of Jennifer's husband has turned out to be a painful experience for her. On numerous occasions, she has said how much she misses him and how challenging it is for her to be in the dark about what transpired on that particular evening, and things have only been made more difficult due to all the scrutiny she has had to suffer. In addition to the fact that she has been bereaved of her husband, she has also been forced to contend with the fury and questioning that has surrounded the case. Jennifer has received a lot of support from people, but she has also received a lot of criticism from other people for not being more forthcoming about the investigation. However, it is essential to keep in mind that she is also a victim of this unfortunate occurrence. It is possible that she is having a difficult time coping with the death of her spouse and the confusion that surrounds his disappearance. The disappearance of George Smith placed his family in a state of utter devastation, which is very understandable. His mother, Maureen Smith, and his father, George Smith Sr., were devastated and refused to accept the possibility that their kid could simply vanish without a trace. They began their own inquiry into the disappearance of their son in the hopes of discovering some answers to the questions they had. When the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the police were unable to produce any substantial clues, the Smith family decided to continue their search with the assistance of private detectives. Sadly, after years of looking and an absence of any new information, they gradually came to terms with the possibility that George would never be located. Since that time, the Smiths have been activists for the families of victims, working to fight for more stringent regulations and additional resources for situations involving missing persons. Additionally, in honor of their son, they established a charity that functions to offer assistance and resources to families of people who have gone missing. Even to this day, George Smith's family and friends continue to remember him with affection, despite the fact that the mystery surrounding his disappearance has not been resolved. It has been said that he is a young man who is clever and ambitious, and who has a strong desire to travel and have experiences in many cultures. His legacy will continue to be carried on by the foundation that was established by his parents, as well as by the recollections that are passed down by those who were closest to him and loved him. All of the people whose lives George Smith touched will never forget him, even though it is possible that his fate will never be completely understood. The unfortunate death of George Smith IV promptly caught Hollywood's attention. As a result of the sad event, The Lifetime Movie Network produced a film with the title Deadly Honeymoon that was partially based on the event. The film depicted the terrifying events that occurred in the wake of George's disappearance, which served to further emphasize the mystery that surrounded the particular case. Although the film was successful in bringing the tragedy that befell the Smith family to a larger audience, it was criticized for its sloppy depiction of the events that transpired. It was also met with a range of reactions from the Smith family, who thought that it sensationalized the death of their son for the aim of providing information for entertainment purposes. The movie, on the other hand, acted as a harsh reminder of the horrible event that took place on the cruise ship, despite the fact that it was the subject of controversy. In spite of the fact that it has been 18 years since George Smith vanished, his legacy continues to haunt both his family and the general public. His narrative has been featured in a number of crime films and news pieces, which has helped to ensure that his memory is preserved, despite the fact that they are now concentrating most of their efforts on assisting other families who have lost loved ones in circumstances that are like their own. His family is still working to get justice for George, in the hopes that one day the truth will be revealed. In spite of the passage of time, the mystery that surrounds George's disappearance has not been investigated, which has transformed their terrifying honeymoon into a true criminal puzzle that cannot be solved. In addition, the events that transpired in the aftermath of George's disappearance serve as a warning tale, prompting individuals to exercise caution and vigilance whenever they are traveling. The tragic event serves as a reminder that even the most perfect holiday can rapidly turn into a nightmare if it is not properly planned. In light of the George Smith case and the influence it has had on the general population, what are your thoughts? How likely is it that his family will ever be able to find peace? Please share your ideas in the comments section below. Let's continue the conversation and pay tribute to George's legacy by bringing attention to the need for travel safety.